I have the pleasure of having Kristen Manieri with me today. And Kristen is a friend. She's been a friend for a long time, and she is amazing. And I'm so glad that she is going to be here with us today. She has so much knowledge to share. So I asked her if she could just start off by sharing just one thing that she feels like could really be a benefit to everyone listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing for parents to realize right now when we're dealing with so much internally, externally, around the world, in our own personal world, is that kids need so much less than we think that they need. And what I can't wait to have everybody focus on today is that it's actually really basic what makes them tick and what makes them happy. And when we really focus our attention on just a few critical things, then all of the noise of like how summer should be and like how to have the best summer ever just goes away. And we can just go, I'm focusing on what really matters. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, I love that. So our topic Kristen proposed was reimagining summer. And when she said that to me, I was like, I could use that. I shared with Kristen earlier that it feels, I know that when it's summertime, for like the end of summer comes for me, I feel like, okay, it's time to start school again, get into some routines. And I feel like that right now, but the summer is just starting. So I'm really excited to dive into this topic. So Kristen, like I said, she is amazing. She's a personal friend. She lives in Florida. She started Orlando Date Night Guide, which she since has sold. And she's focusing now she does courses and coaching, and she has an amazing podcast. And then at the end, I'll make sure you tell everyone where they can find you online and on social media. And I love, every time I'm with Kristen, I walk away feeling like, wow, what like an amazing conversation. And every time we're together, I just love it. I learned so much from you. And she's the most avid reader I have ever encountered. She's always reading. So I'll have to ask you that later, like what's your reading right now. But
Yeah.
Start a watch party. We have so much good stuff coming from Kristen. So Kristen, let's just dive into your topic of reimagining summer. Like let's dive in.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that a lot of people are feeling right now is maybe disappointment. Plans have changed, budgets have changed. Maybe someone in the family, their business isn't doing as well, or maybe someone has been furloughed or has been let go. And so the money just isn't there for big summer plans. In a lot of places, not all places, but in a lot of places, summer camps have been canceled. So just a lot of the things like travel and fun little day trips and camp, a lot of stuff that we usually design our summer around is not available this summer. And I think that's leaving a lot of people feeling really sad, but also just really a little unglued, a little unanchored. Our basic, go-tos are not available. Travel, camps, things like that. So I think the first thing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was say, which for you always plan epic summer adventures.
Yeah, we're not usually gone all summer. We leave around this time and we come back about a week, sometimes not even a week before school, sometimes like the day before school starts.
That's amazing. So you had to shift, just what you're saying exactly is you're feeling it too.
Totally. So this process was born out of my need to not feel like this summer's going to stink. This is going to be the worst summer ever. I don't want to feel like that. Like we don't get a magical clock when we're born that says this is how much time you get. And so we have to assume that it's all precious, that every summer is precious, that every day is precious. And so I certainly wouldn't want this to go down in the Manieri family history as like the worst summer, that's the summer that sucked.
That one summer, yes.
Right. And not that I'm putting pressure on myself to say, oh, to the contrary, best summer ever. No, definitely not. I'm absolutely not saying that. but what I'm saying is that when we can pivot and we can get gritty and get creative about how we could reorient the way that we think about summer, and what actually is what we're creating really is connection with our kids. It's really an opportunity to be together as a family, not every minute of the day, but in a way that's just very deliberate and very intentional. So do you want me
I
to
love
just go
that.
through the first step?
Yeah, sure. And I love that you said that that's what we're trying to create is connection, because this is called the connection series. So I love that you
Yeah.
got that. And I'm sure that wasn't intentional, but I think you're right. That's what ultimately, like, what do we do all those things for
Yeah.
anyway?
Well, I know how you and Chris have spent a lot of time around your family, and slept over at your house, been woken up by your chickens, your rooster. And I know vice versa. Our families really align in that, we really like being with like as a family. It's actually our sort of preferred mode of travel together. I
Mm-hmm.
have a little sign in my kitchen that says my favorite places together. And
Love that.
the other thing is that another place that you and I really intersect on is that we realize that when we get really deliberate about connecting with our kids, that we can create a really enjoyable way to be a family together. Like, I really love being with my kids, and it saddens me that I know that it's not that way for every parent. But I don't think that's ever a lost cause. I think that through connection, we can always find our way back to the dream that we had when we were, walking around 35 pounds overweight with a gigantic thing in front of us, where we thought, oh my God, I'm going to be a mom, or I'm going to be a dad, and I'm going to have these amazing kids. And then, then it gets hard. And so with
Totally.
some intention and with some deliberateness, I think we can reorient ourselves back to just really enjoying being a family, regardless of what is happening out there in the world.
I love that. Okay, so Kristen is going to dive right in how to create this magical summer despite, anything else that may be going on around you. So start a watch party if you haven't already. And yeah, I'm excited to take notes myself, because
Cool.
like you said, we were supposed to be in New York this week, and it's fine that we're not, but we're having to shift and adjust, and I still want to create something beautiful this summer.
Yeah. Yeah. And without this pressure of being this perfect Pinterest mom. Nothing against Pinterest. I think it's an amazing resource, but that pressure we put on ourselves, that bar that gets, that comes out of nowhere that says, like, it's got to be this kind of summer. I know, I'll create my own camp and it'll be this and this and this and this. Like, I'm speaking into a mirror right now, because that is a tendency that I would normally have. And what I've realized is that while that might create, amazing experiences for everyone else in the family, I get kind of left in the dust. Like, the me that once everything's created and I've kind of burned out from the enjoyment of launching it, it's like, oh, well, what about me? What about what I want? So the whole process of reimagining summer is collaborative. And I know that's something that you and Chris really align on as well. I love Chris's quote: if they plan the battle, they don't battle the plan. And
Totally.
I know that's not his quote, but he says it, and I think it's awesome. But the first step is coming together and using some keywords. And I can get you these sheets afterwards, Melissa, if you want.
Yeah,
But really just using some keywords, or just kind of wordsmithing it as a family, is like, what matters? Like, what really, and this is not unlike your family brand process, is like, what are the words that seem like when we say them, it's like, yes, that's us. Well, it's really taking that same process and saying, like, what matters to us this summer? Almost like taking that, rather than looking at like as a whole family, as a whole life, but like for like June, July, and August, like, what are we going to say is that really matters? And so a couple of words that I'll just share is adventure, balance, challenge, communication, community, connection. There's that word. Contribution, creativity, friendship, growth, generosity, freedom, learning, I've got wonder on that list, play, rest. So for us as a family, I sat down with this list and said, okay, I gave everybody a copy of it and had everybody circle until we came down with the handful of ones that really were for us. And for us this summer, what we're focused on is balance, connection, creativity, health, learning, novelty, play, and rest. And I know that sounds a lot, but when we go through the process of saying, okay, well, how does that actually translate into what we do and experience? So a lot of those overlap
Yeah, you
on
could.
each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in one
Yeah,
experience, you could hit several of those.
totally. So that first step is saying like what matters? Like what do we want as a family this summer? For some families it might be like we want adventure. And for some families it might be like we want rest. It all
Mm-hmm.
has, and that even might change across your individual family. You might have one kid that's like, I want to explore and I want creativity. And you might have another kid that's like, I love sleeping in. I'm loving the fact that we never have anywhere to be anymore. Like I'm not on the clock all summer long. So does anything come to mind for you off the top of your head is like, ooh, that's like one of the things that we're really keyed up about this summer?
One word that comes up is, so Chris and I went out of town for a couple of days last week, and we went on a little hike, and during the hike, it was in Utah, it started snowing on us, and
Oh my God.
I was like caught unprepared because it wasn't at all snowing when we left, and we kept saying like, this is such an adventure, like this is so fun. Because we never get caught up in crazy adventures like that. And so that we've been talking about that word a lot actually, is adventure. And just last night we took a little adventure with our older two, an hour away, and did a lot of hikes. So adventure.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and when we get to that part about brainstorming, okay, so what would adventure look like for us? It gets really, really fun because rather than asking the question that we normally ask is like, okay, what's everybody's bucket list, or what does everybody want to make sure to do this summer? When you say, okay, if adventure is important to us, or at least enough of us that it makes the list, what would adventure look like? And then you start creating from a really different place. And I'll go through some of that with you when I share our experience of it. But I think it's important before you get too far into what are we going to create, what do we want, what matters. I think it's really important to stop for a beat and say what doesn't matter. And so some of the things that are on that list are like being busy or being productive or clean rooms. You might decide as a family, probably going to have consensus amongst your kids.
I think everyone would agree on that one.
A summer of like, yeah, we're just not going to have clean rooms this summer. Or like the standard of clean is going to be, having laundry done every week. I have a friend, John, one of my favorite pieces of advice he's ever given me. I was complaining about having to do laundry every week. And he's like, just buy 7 more pairs of underwear. And I was like, oh my God, that's genius. That is genius. So if what doesn't matter to you this summer is making sure you get laundry done every single week, then, buy 7 more pairs of underwear for everybody. Maybe cooking every day. We started buying on Sundays. We take a really deliberate day of rest on Sundays. And I started buying frozen pizzas because lunch on Sunday is one of those things like, I don't feel like making lunch on Sundays. It's like we do a big brunch and then Mark makes a big dinner. I don't want to worry about lunch. It feels like another meal. Mm-hmm. I'm not crazy about frozen pizzas. Like I don't think of them as like a really great form of nutrition, but like for like insert food here moments, I was like, awesome. So maybe this is the summer where you're like, you know what, this is going to be the chicken nugget and frozen pizza summer. Like it is not going to alter the trajectory of your family's health if that you decide that if it's an odd day, we don't cook and we get takeout or whatever. So again, like a lot of the things that we normally put a lot of pressure on ourselves, cooking every meal at home, maybe making more money or getting a promotion, you're going to just say like, that's not important this summer. Or maybe losing weight or having a schedule, or maybe that you're all together all the time, or personal growth. You might decide like, yeah, personal growth just doesn't matter to me this summer? And growth, is also on what could matter. It's on that list as
Yeah.
well. So it's such an individualized approach. Personal growth is always going to be important to me. So I wouldn't take that off of the table in terms of, but it's not important to everybody else. So again, the juxtaposition of like, here's what matters and here's what doesn't matter as part of the conversation you have collaboratively, maybe at dinner or something, is a really great place to see like, okay, those things don't matter. Like those, I'm not going to put some pressure on myself for those things. So do you see anything doesn't matter?
Well, one thing that's coming up for me, kind of aside from that, is I know that you are a big advocate of like mindfulness and having like a morning like meditation. And I'm what's coming up for me is like, oh, that would be the perfect opportunity for me to start thinking about these kind of things before I propose them to the family. Is what are my yeses and what are my nos kind of this summer, and that would be the perfect spot to begin thinking about that. But specifically, what would be not important? That's a great question. I loved what you said about the rooms clean. I know that my family would be all over that, and I could see the usefulness in me just taking a little step back from that being important. It would
Yeah.
add to the adventure maybe, and add to
Yeah.
the feeling of the summer.
Yeah. And maybe it would take the fact that you're just not going to go in their room all summer, because I know for me, all bets are off if I actually have to like walk through their room. Now we tuck them in
Totally.
at night in their room. So anytime that I propose that, like, well, if the room's not clean, then I can't go in it. So I'm not tucking you in. They're like,
Yeah.
no, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that either. But sometimes a lot of these things, when we agree upon them as a family, take more self-management than anything
Yes.
else. Like being able to manage myself in the face of a messy room and being like, okay, it's only one part of the house. I'm just going to close the door and move on.
Yeah, I agree, because I know that's exactly what my hesitation around it would be me. Like,
Yeah.
can I manage myself around the messy or untidy rooms?
Yeah. Well, and for us, like a big agreement that we've made is we've loosened the reins on how we want their rooms to be. But we've done that in response to an agreement from them to be a lot more conscious about the rest of the space. All the clutter, the projects that get started and then just get left, and the snacks that get left, and the half drunk juices that, you know what I mean, all the
Yes.
things, is them being a lot more mindful about, okay, I'm not going to get so on top of you about your space, but how you'll reciprocate is you're going to bring a lot more intention about how you're going to take care of our space. And that's been working really, really well for us.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great
So
idea.
far, so good.
So far.
So then once you have some real thoughtfulness and some agreement around here's what matters, here's what doesn't matter, well, then you can start actually creating like some lists. So it's literally just writing down on a top of a piece of paper. Like I have these sheets, but it just says like, what's the fundamental, and what do I want to do, create an experience that would have us embody that fundamental. So a good example for us is connection. That's pretty much number one for us. And so then we made a big list, like what would our summer look like? What would we be doing, creating, or experiencing if connection was a priority for us? So nightly family walks is something that really matters to us. Having screen-free Sundays, having family game nights. We started doing like a special weekend brunch together. So on Sunday, like around 11, like we have a big fancy pancake, like the whole big thing brunch. And it's been really, really nice. We do a lot of baking and cooking together. We've been known to play Chopped, where I'll go buy a bunch of like random things and assign it to the team, and they have to cook things. Going on bike rides, playing pool games. So like none of that involves us getting on an airplane or paying a bunch of money to be in a hotel. But kids, this is a great list for kids. This is like
Totally.
a happy kids list, and this is like a happy mom list. But it all comes from that place, because what drives it is how can we just have more connection? And I'll tell you, and I know you'll agree with me, Nothing makes a kid happier than when they feel really like beautifully, lovingly connected with their parents and their siblings, but mostly with their parents.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story where, a summer, it's the end of a summer, and a dad's, laying out on the trampoline with his son, asking him, like, we had all these amazing adventures, and what was your favorite? And the son's favorite is the time they were like looking at the stars together one
Yeah.
night. But I think
Yeah.
it's so true.
Yeah, when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like that pyramid, the very bottom of it is safety, rest, water, and food. All of the Disney's trips, they don't come until way other way on the upper part of that pyramid, if they're there at all. But they want safety, rest, food, and water. We can handle that. And they want belonging and love. They just want to feel like they matter. And so for us, connection is a big part of that, but we also had creativity on our list. So while we're not making this the summer of projects and the summer of like, this is when we're going to get all these things done, totally not doing that. We are going to turn like our like storage shed. We're having a contractor come, and not in a fancy way, we're turning that into like a she shed, like a maker space.
For
And
you?
no, for all of us.
For everyone.
Yes.
Cool.
So
So
from creativity, that really checks that list off, because we can all go into that space whenever we want, and we can just make things.
I love that. It's a
Yeah.
designated space to like be creative.
Yeah. And that really came from my daughter Elizabeth, who will be 12 in September. Her coming to me and saying, I love doing art. Like, I think I really see myself being an artist someday, but I hate the process of like getting it all out of our craft cupboard. And of course, either Mark and I are like, make sure you put down the drop sheet, and mom, where are you doing that? And
Yeah.
then of course, then she's done, and it's like we're giving her the side eye for a day and a half. Like, are you going to clean that up? Like, when is that all going to go back away? So she'd said, I just wish I had a space where it was all just there, like where I could just go make things and it wasn't such a big rigmarole. And I was like, yeah, you do. Like, of course, if you're a creator, like, of course you would want to have that. So yeah, so I
Totally.
was like, you know what? I don't like, I think we can do it. So when our plans got canceled and we were like, okay, let's pivot. It's like, that makes sense. That seems like a good place to spend some time and some money. So that's under creativity for us. And
Yeah, and it's right in line with what you're wanting to create this summer is
yeah,
creativity.
and connection too.
Connection.
Like, I know we did a big art project just this past weekend. We really like doing that kind of stuff together. So I think that really organically we're going to find ourselves in that space a lot, and she can just go into that space by herself. I think that's really great too, having connection with herself. I think that would be beautiful. But learning is definitely high on our list. It's always high on my list, but this summer we love to learn. We're making it a priority. We just started a summer travel project, and I think I may have been telling you about this a couple of weeks ago, but as you had mentioned earlier, travel obviously is a big part of our lives, and we're sad that we're not going to cross any countries off of our list this year. So
Yeah.
I thought, you know what? Let's just bring the world to us. So we've got 12 weeks of summer before we go back to school. I know that's insane. We're only a week two. And we have four of us in our family. So you divide that up. We each picked 3 countries. And so every single week we go to a different country. So the first week was Japan. This week is Egypt. And we do PowerPoint presentations or video presentations. Ali's going to create, she's her topic this week is Egyptian music. So she's actually going to create a Spotify playlist, and we're going to just actually, rather than her present like, this is the type of instrument and these are some famous bands, we're actually going to listen to different Egyptian music. I'm doing a presentation on Egyptian food, but I also cook something from that country every week, and then we order out something from that country every single week. And we'll watch a documentary or maybe like a travel show about that country. And then if we can, we'll get on Zoom with someone who's either from that country or is an expert or like has at least been there. And it turns out that my cousin has been there 3 times. His dad is Egyptian. And
Wow.
so we're going to have a Zoom call with him on Sunday night. And we've already been learning about Egypt all week long, like eating the food and learning about the music, obviously. And I think Mark did one on famous places. He did his presentation on famous places. So yeah, it's just a really cool way to learn about the world, and we're having so much fun with it. And they gravitated, they totally grabbed onto it.
That's cool. And I love that it's so collaborative. Everyone's contributing and connecting around the same idea of
Yeah.
a certain country every week.
Yeah.
That's
We
cool.
try to use the word, like some words that week. Like last week was Japanese. So like arigato. I think that means thank you. And then this week is salam, which I think means hello.
Awesome. I
So
don't even
yeah,
know.
it's nice.
That's
It's
cool.
just neat. Yeah. So we're doing some cool things, but that really falls under that category of learning and novelty. Like how can we bring more learning and novelty? And like if you really break that down, that's not really a big deal. I spent about 15 minutes doing a PowerPoint presentation this week on Egyptian food, and probably about that much time looking up what I could cook. I ended up cooking this chicken dish that was really easy, and it just incorporated spices that I never would have put together before. I was like putting cinnamon on chicken, like, I've never done that before.
Who knew?
So it's not like it's taken a lot of time, and it certainly hasn't taken a lot of money, but it's something that's been like a real delight for our family. So yeah. So let me think if there's any more. Definitely rest. So I think I mentioned rest is one of ours that's really important to us. Sleeping in on the weekends, doing a lot of reading, being really light and loose about any plans and schedules and commitments. It's easier to do that right now with all of us still social distancing, and really just embracing idleness as parents. I think we if we've been raised that like being idle is lazy, or we've got some sort of construct around that, when we see our kids be idle, like not doing something,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not talking about just being on a screen, but like just, being whimsical, like just going where the day takes them. For some parents, that can be really triggering, but there's so much research to show that that's so good for their brains. In fact, being bored is so good for their brains, because in boredom, we start to kind of root around in our brain for like, how am I going to get out of this boredom state? And they come up with games. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this 100 times with your kids.
Yeah, I am not quick to jump in if they're bored. I'm like, I remember being bored plenty when I was when I was growing up, and that's when you get like creative and resourceful
Totally.
and new
Yeah.
things emerge.
Yeah. Boredom is the gateway to ingenuity for sure. It definitely is. So really so the steps are what matters, what doesn't matter,
Getting clear on that.
getting really clear, and writing it down. There's such a, as you well know, when you put it to paper and actually almost like a document, like here's our summer manifesto, it's different than it was just a conversation that we had sometime at the end of May or the beginning of June. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it has a different spirit to it when you actually write it down and maybe even print it, like we did, like we actually printed it. So what matters, what doesn't matter, and then you take what matters and you start to actually like get the rubber to hit the road. What does it look like? So there's only one more step, but I wanted to just check in to see if you had any questions before I moved into that final step.
No, I think the way you've described it is beautiful. Things that you're naturally already curious about, plugging those in, like things that anyone and everyone wants to know more about and do more
Yeah.
of. Those are the things that you plug in there after you've
Great.
gotten clear.
Yeah. Yeah. The last thing, and honestly, it's the last thing, but it's the most important thing. And that is that mom or whoever is sort of leading this endeavor, who was ever kind of like shouldering most of the responsibility of like the summer,
Mm-hmm.
that they are really clear about self-maintenance. And I stopped using the word self-care because I think it's been kind of co-opted by like the cosmetics industry and the spa industry and the
That is a
advertising.
popular word, huh? Right now,
It is,
self-care.
and then it gets all convoluted with like pampering and like getting my
Mm.
nails done. And what I'm talking about when I say self-maintenance is like what are your like ideal growing conditions? Like if you were a plant, like how much sunshine, fertilizer, nutrients, water, fresh air. Like, what do you need so that you're like this and not like like a wilted,
Like a
droopy
wilting.
house plant? Yes. And getting really clear, like, what do I need every day to really feel at my best? Not to be perfect. It doesn't inoculate you against ever yelling at your kids again, but like, what do I need to feel like I'm sturdy, like I'm strong and I'm contented. I'm not harboring resentment against my spouse. I'm not harboring resentment of my kids or the government, whatever it is, this shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
happening. Like, I feel good. Like, I feel on top of it. And knowing what those things are, when you don't feel good, you're a lot more likely to be able to identify what went wrong, what's taken you off course. And those are usually basic things. Do you have enough water? Have you had enough to eat? Have you had enough sleep? Have you had enough time to yourself? Have you had enough partnership? Have you had enough acknowledgement? I mean, everybody's ideal growing conditions are different, but certainly acknowledgement is on that list, because having someone be able to say every once in a while, like, you're doing a great job, I appreciate you, is like, for some people, that is sunshine. That is like,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, I
I
think
can
so.
keep going.
What are some of your ideal growing conditions? Like, what do you need to feel like your steadiest and your sturdiest?
I was just telling Chris and the boys that I feel like everyone has hobbies in the family except for me. I was like, I feel like I would like to have a hobby to explore, and that would give me some ideal growing, that would be in my ideal growing conditions, because the thing I identified is we have this river by our house called the Salt River that you can kayak, you can stand up paddleboard. I was like, I think something like that where I can get outside in nature, I think that would be an ideal growing condition for me. And also just time to, I don't know, just be with myself or whoever I choose to be with at that time, but just like an intentional time where I can focus on that. I think that would be can deal ideal growing conditions for me, is adding that to my life that I've maybe kind of missing right now.
I love that. I love that. And so I think an important step is when you start to kind of make that list of like, what what makes me tick? Like, how do I be the best version of me that I can every day? You can also start to see, okay, when I get that, this is how I show up in the world. Like, this is how I feel inside when I've really met my needs. And this is how I feel when I have not met my needs. And then the other part of that is, here's how I treat others when I've met my needs. And here's how I treat others when I have not met my needs. And like, who hasn't been hangry? Like, it's real.
It's
But
real.
we know that, especially as moms, that we're like, the output is constant.
Yeah.
We are giving all day long. And so if our well is empty even before the day has started, then we don't really have much of a chance to be the kind of mom that we want to be. And so we find ourselves being edgy and frustrated and, really quick to be critical and maybe feeling resentful about who we share our life with. And so when we roll it back and say, okay, what have I done to set myself up for success today? Like, to really look at the foundations of my well-being, and have I actually honored those? And if the answer is no, then why not? Because you honoring those is what has you bring yourself effectively to other people, lovingly, patiently, all the things. So the last step is really sitting down and making your best me plan. Like, these are the 4 or 5 or 6 things that I need to really be my steadiest and sturdiest. And how will I get those? And that might actually, in your case, sitting down with Chris and saying, having a hobby, having something that lights me up, feeling like something that I feel like I'm getting better at, or that I go do that's mine, is really important to me. So it's like, how? Like, am I going to do it? Are we going to get like a sitter that comes in once a week and I'm going to go do it then? Are you going to take a half day off every Friday and I'm going to do it then? How is this going to work? But it's such a worthy conversation, because you matter. Like, you matter. You matter because of the family that you're creating. and your happiness matters. And just, you could just say that full stop, but you could say, because the more you flourish, the more you thrive, the more everybody else does, the more joy, the more calm, the more peace, the more steadiness that everyone experiences in the family. So I love to debunk this idea that a mom who takes care of herself is somehow selfish or self-indulgent. It's the most generous and giving thing a mom can do, is to take care of herself. Hands
Love
down.
that. I feel like when you're speaking right now, I feel like, okay, this is like her genius. Like, I don't know. I love how you speak about this. And to me, it feels like, oh, so true. Like when I feel like I've had my ideal growing conditions, as you said earlier, like I feel like I'm showing up for everyone else in my life like that much more powerfully.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, the biggest one is my morning centering practice. So I get up an hour before everybody else these days, a few hours before everybody else, because getting up early is not important. That is not one of our fundamentals. I don't care what time they get up. But for me, I get up, I have my tea, I sit and I meditate, or I just sit and watch my crazy monkey mind. I journal, I read really inspiring books, I go for a walk, and it's like, that's when I set the direction of the day. It's like, this is what my center is, and now I'm navigating how the day goes from that place. And that doesn't mean that I don't get thrown off at some point, but because I'm so familiar with what centered feels like, because that's how I start my day. Whenever I'm not that, it's almost like an alarm system. I'm like, ooh, like I'm not centered. It doesn't feel good. And I can do something to bring myself back, which could be something as simple as like, I need a drink of water. I need a cold drink of water. So that is a huge, and you know, this, something I've been talking about with you for years, is like, get up before your kids, spend some time grounding down, and get steady and sturdy before the winds start to
Yeah,
come in.
totally. Well, thank you so much. Like I mentioned earlier, every time we talk, I leave thinking like, oh, like I want to do, I don't know, just I leave feeling lighter and inspired, and I love that every time I'm with you. That's how I feel. So how can people find out more about you and what you do? How can they connect with you?
Sure. Well, they can go to KristenManieri.com, and they can find out about my podcast, which is called 60 Mindful Minutes. And you guys were just on there a couple of weeks ago. It was a
We
great
were
conversation about family brand and how to have an intentional family culture. I loved that conversation. I got such great feedback about it. I
fun.
never got a chance to tell you that, so I wanted to tell you that. So you can find out
Thank
about the
you.
podcast. You can find out about, I do have a free course on how to start a daily centering practice. And then there's also some more resources that you can get involved with if that's something you're like, oh yeah, I want that. I want this daily practice that could really serve me. I'm kind of like a good hub for all of those things. So yeah, KristenManieri.com, and reach
Okay, well,
out.
we'll put a link too in
Yeah,
this end of this.
that would be great. Thank you. And I feel the exact same way when I'm with you. I get inspired, and even if it's just sitting back and just watching how you are with Chris and how you are with your kids and what you've created with family brands, and this idea of how intentional we can get about what we're creating inside the walls of our home. I'm so inspired by what you guys are doing. So the feeling's definitely mutual. I might read a little more, but you do inspire me.
You do read a lot. I love that you do. Okay, leave us with one, because I said that earlier. That I was going to ask you, what's
Oh, goodness. Well,
one book?
I I read Better Than Before. I read it on vacation, so it was like I was steeped in it for a week. We went away to the beach, and Better Than Before. It's written by Gretchen Rubin. I think it was the book right after she did the Happiness Project. I love both those books, but Better Than Before is all about habits and understanding like how we create them and how we adhere to them and what gets in the way of them. And then I read The Power of Habit after that, which is good, but I liked Better Than Before better
Better than
because I
before.
like Gretchen Rubin. She's my spirit animal.
Cool. I'm gonna check her out.
Yeah.
Better
Yeah.
than before. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Kristen.
Thank
It's so great to
you.
have you.
Thank you so much.